Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Project Return online classroom. This is Miss Madison. Today we are going to be doing an exercise on Entopic Graphomania. That is a fancy word for something that is not nearly as difficult to say as it is to do. Entopic Graphomania is a surrealist automatic way of drawing. And for this today, you're going to be needing really any surface of paper. You can use a blank sheet of paper, construction paper, or if you have a book that you don't mind sacrificing. I happen to have two dictionaries, so I use one of them as more of like my art dictionary that I don't mind tearing out and using pages on. So if you have something like that around, you can use that as well. You can really use any sort of surface and in any sort of drawing material. Sharpie and pen is a big one, but you can also add color to it. You can use colored lines, and you can also use rulers as well. It's very versatile, and I'm going to show you how we can create so many different types using Entopic Graphomania. So like I said, Entopic Graphomania is a surrealist automatic way of drawing. It's really based on making points at spots of impurities on a blank sheet of paper, historically a blank sheet of paper. In this case, for my dictionary page, I am just doing, anytime I see a number, it doesn't have to be every single number, but more of just automatically any number that's jumping out at me, I am putting a dot on. And then once you have all of your dots down, you then connect them with lines. They can be curvy, they can be straight, you can use a ruler, and I'm going to show you all different ways that I'm going to be doing that. For this one, I'm mainly going to be messing with different line weights. So when I'm connecting all of my lines, I'm going to start off with a thicker Sharpie, and then I'm going to go back in with a thinner liner pen. You can use just a regular ballpoint pen if you want. And the main thing is that this is something that's not based on observational drawing. It's purely from our subconscious and just kind of getting in more of a flow kind of state. Sometimes we can get really in our own heads trying to draw what we see. You know, I love looking at proportions and thinking about, you know, how I can make something look realistic, but sometimes it's also good, and also just a good exercise as well, a good warm-up, just to kind of move from our subconscious a little bit and relax, and just make some lines. As I'm going in with my smaller liner, sometimes I'm being a little bit more free with my hand movements. I'm not trying to get as tight or as perfect of lines. Sometimes adding a little bit more freedom and movement to our line can give it a little bit more expression, and I like to do that a lot. I'm mainly building up areas where a lot of my lines were coming out of my main points of interest. That way it kind of creates a value starting from a darker area, gradually going up to a lighter area. So I really like how this ended up turning out, especially those more condensed areas where my darker values are darker, and then fading them out to the lighter, more open areas of my page. This is a good exercise to practice creating more value and creating contrast between our darker and lighter areas, especially using line and a thinner pen. Now for our second version, I'm going to be using just a blank piece of paper. Now for the dictionary page, I was just using some numbers that were jumping out at me. Mainly and historically, Entopic Graphomania is based off of impurities on a blank sheet of paper, like I said in the beginning. So what I'm doing is I'm finding maybe little dust particles. The paper that I have has a little bit of a texture to it, so any sort of ridges that maybe are sticking out to me. And you're just doing this as randomly and automatically as you see them. With this one, I'm going to connect a lot more of my points into a more of a condensed area instead of having them spread out like I did in the first one. That's some way I wanted to change it, and I really want to show you guys, especially how you can make so many different versions based off of just the idea of Entopic Graphomania. So I'm keeping my lines more condensed, I know that going in, and then as I build them up a little bit more to build up a little bit more interest, when I start to color it, I'm going to start coloring it based off of what we've learned on the color wheel. Now this is also another way to just practice mixing colors using colored pencil instead of paint. So what I'm going to be doing is using my three primary colors. I'm going to be using lighter values, and when I'm trying to achieve a lighter value, that means I'm going to be pressing with a lighter pressure. So I start off with these lighter pressures, lighter values of my color. And I gradually, especially with colored pencil, like to go back and forth layering on top of them. So I started off with my red with more of a light layer, trying to kind of figure out how far out, very lightly, I still want my color to go. And then where I want it to be a darker value, I apply a harder pressure, and then I start working my way up, lightening up my pressure on my pencil to the paper as I'm trying to make it more gradual, coming out to a lighter area. As I'm introducing that yellow, I'm making sure I'm just going back and forth, building up my layers lightly. As I'm building up that yellow and that red, as we know, make orange. That orange starts to stick out a little bit, and it's more of a gradual process. It's probably not going to stick out to you as much in your face as it would with paint. Of course, if I kept building it up, I can make it darker, but I really kind of want it to be a more subtle change as you go from the three primary colors. I use that same technique of working up lightly as I mix from my red to my yellow, and then my yellow to my blue, and then building up those darker value areas, and then going back and forth and building up those layers. It really is a gradual process of just going back and forth, and then once I move on to another phase, so if I go to the yellow area of my drawing, I can still go back and say, oh, now that I've built up my yellow, my red isn't looking as built up as it needs to be. So I can go back and forth and make sure that everything has a good balance to it. When I start to get to that area to the left of my red, I had a lot of fun with this, creating a purple. I love purple, so I definitely wanted to experiment more with having one area burst out being purple. So I did the very, very similar thing of building up the red and the blue. Now, of course, I wanted it to be a stronger value and a stronger saturation too, a stronger version of purple than maybe I was getting from the green, from my blue and my yellow, and different from the orange I was getting from my red and my yellow. I wanted it to be darker, so I had to apply a lot more layers and apply a lot more pressure with my red and my purple. My red and my blue to create that darker purple. And I really like how this one turned out. Already with the lines pinching together in those areas, we were creating a three-dimensional effect with those darker values. But adding the color, I think, just livened it up a little bit more. And also we could still practice our color wheel and also mixing with colored pencil even more. So this is just another way that we can spice up the Entopic Graphomania subject matter. And the last way I'm going to show you guys how to do it, still starting off with that same way of doing the random dots. I'm using a piece of construction paper just to show you how you can still use maybe just a Sharpie, but having a colored background can spice it up a little bit if you don't feel like coloring it in. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using curvy lines like the last two that I've done, I'm actually going to use my ruler instead. And I'm going to start by just kind of keeping it to one dotted area and seeing how many lines I can connect it to. And then just really using my ruler. I'm not thinking too much about trying to make a specific form, which is really cool when you start to use more of these geometric lines. I think it kind of starts to look like a little bit like a gemstone, or these are like rock formations, just because they become pointy and it creates a really cool effect. And it's a lot different looking than the other ones that we've created, and you're still using that same method of Entopic Graphomania. Now you can have fun with this even further and continue to add even more lines to it that aren't connected to those original, impurity dots, as we call them, or whatever they were. You can kind of do whatever you want. I didn't really like the look of it after a while, what I was doing, so I'm really glad that I filmed the final scene before I started doing this, but I just wanted to show you guys that you still can continue to take these exercises even further. So here they are all finished. I had a lot of fun with this. I think the colored one is my favorite. I'm kind of tempted to actually finish it now that I look at it a little bit more, and maybe I'll go back to adding some more lines to this one. But I just wanted to show you guys that there's so many different ways that you can do this, and I hope you guys have fun with this. I know staying inside, especially when it's really rainy, can cause us to feel a little bit down, but I hope that you guys can be a little bit entertained, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Bye.